I'm Amy Morgan, the feature writer for the Marriage Initiative, and I'm just delighted to introduce Bree and Kevin Bailey to you. Founders of Reverence Restored Ministry, this Nebraska-based couple overcame their own marital struggles and now offer faith-based online coaching courses that help men, women, and couples build marriages that will matter and legacies that will last. And that's your tagline. Bree, Kevin, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I stole that one from your website because you guys have such great languaging there. Will you share your story with us about how you got started in this place?
Yeah, we would love to. We've been married for 22 years, purely by the grace of God. We celebrated 22 years last week. And for us, it was, awesome time. And for us, we got married at a pretty young age, and Bree had a daughter from high school that was brought into the equation already. So we had some challenges from that right out of the gate. And really, we just started jumping into life as fast as we could. It was about how much money we could make, raising kids, doing everything that you're supposed to do, that the world defines that marriage makes a marriage successful. And unfortunately for us, that didn't result in success. We found ourselves in a really tough spot. 7 years in and out of counseling, nearly $100,000 spent on the divorce process, and 1 week away from a finalized divorce when I walked in or had a phone call with Bree and just asked for her forgiveness. And she said, "Yes, I forgive you." And then I walked into a church and surrendered my life to Christ that day. And from that moment on, God started putting our marriage back together, surrounded us with amazing people. We had to put a new operating system into place. We had to learn what marriage looked like from a godly perspective. When I went the way of the world, Bree went the way of the word. So she was battling in prayer for our marriage to be restored after being separated for 10 months. And we had to learn what it looked like to bring these two broken people, a broken marriage, and two entirely different systems underneath one roof and say, you know what, we're going to place God at the center of our marriage and figure out how to make this thing work so that we could ultimately build a legacy that lasts. And here we are 10 years later, almost 10 years later, I guess 9.5 years later, and nearly a decade we've been back together. And it's just time has flown by, and God has just shown up in radical ways time after time in our marriage. And now has given us the ability to have a platform where we get the opportunity to coach other couples, coach individuals, and just speak about the power of what it looks like to build marriage on God's truth. It's so much different than anything that we learned. So now we get the ability to put it into play for us as well, and then also practice coaching it to other people and coaching with other people, and really just building out some awesome programs that bring practical help in a world where there's just not a lot of great guidance on what it looks like to do this in a way that honors God and restores honor in marriages.
I want to go back. You said there was a phrase that you threw in there, and it's something that I wrote about when we talked before in the article, just about, you said that you went the way of the world and Bree went the way of the word. Yeah. And so, Bree, I would like you to share a little bit about your journey and what you did, because I think you really, and I know this is something that you share with the women that you coach, but you really provide an example. I mean, Kevin, you were doing what a lot of men do, that you were chasing the golden, the brass ring, or, doing the big Fortune 500 job and putting all that ahead. You could talk a little bit more about that if you want in a minute, but I'd like to hear from Bree's perspective, because you really model just a really great pathway, a very biblical example. So let's share a little bit about that.
Thank you so much. I didn't feel like I was modeling anything at the time. It felt very laborsome and tiresome, and yet God still gave me the endurance to continue. Early on, when we arrived at this decision that he said, "I'm not happy. I think we need to separate. I think I need to move out," I went into panic mode at first. I thought, oh my gosh, not us. No, that's not going to happen. We can fix this. And he was done. He just was simply done. He had gotten tired of trying, I believe, and was involved in just some things that the world said was okay. And I had reached out to a friend specifically and said, "We need help. This is bad this time. We are going to probably divorce. What can I do?" And she pointed me to a couple of resources. And of course, it was faith-based. we had both grown up going to church in different cities and done the whole thing, Sunday school, afternoons on Wednesdays. And we had a good foundation, but we had no relationship with the Lord. What we had gone to do in our adult life was we were busy and our kids were in things. And so we would go on Sundays, and that's pretty much the extent of it. And so I started to learn, oh my gosh, I need more of the Lord. I too have fallen short in our marriage. And I had this desire early on that God could fix this. Yeah. Of course, it seemed crazy to a lot of people on the outside, but I had that inner circle that was encouraging me and said, no, we're going to pray. Yeah. Probably 6 weeks later, I attended a different church than we had been going to for a fresh perspective. Yeah. And I ended up getting saved. I knew that God was my savior. And if I was going to trust him, this was going to be a time that only he could do a miracle. And so over those next several months, I was blessed to be around a lot of women who were showing me what a godly wife was like, how to open up the Bible, how to have it make sense, and really say, okay, I have to daily surrender my marriage. I got to get my eyes off of my husband. Yeah. One of my mentors said, eyes on Jesus, over and over. And I thought, yes, I have my eyes on Jesus, but how it's so hard not to keep my eyes on him when he's making me so mad. Let's be real. And so 10 months goes by and I had gotten to a spot over and over again. Lord, I trust you to restore this marriage. It does not look good, but help me, sustain me. And that's what he did.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. And then there was that day, and it was a really interesting day, the day before April Fool's.
It was actually April Fool's Day. I texted her the day before, but it was actually April Fool's Day.
Yeah. So March 31st is my birthday.
Yeah.
And we had just gotten through a deposition a couple weeks before that was really bad. And I don't know if some of your listeners can relate, but you're in this room with your attorney on one side with you, and your spouse and their attorney, and then like a court reporter, mediator that was taking all the notes. And it was just a disaster. I just could not believe that we were sitting across from each other. Yeah. And there was so much destruction, and it was just a mess. And so that was a couple weeks before. And then he had reached out via text because we didn't really have a lot of communication. It was when the kids were getting dropped off, and it was just a lot of heartache and silence. And so he had reached out via text about something in between there. And I thought, okay, I don't know, maybe that sounds a little bit different. His tone in the text, if you can imagine, sounded different. And then he reached out on March 31st on my birthday to tell me happy birthday. And I was not expecting that, because something so little and platonic, really, of wishing someone happy birthday, I could tell something was different. And so he said, can we meet tomorrow? And I said, okay. I was scared to death. I wasn't sure what he was going to say other than, let's just be done. We have fought enough. Let's just be absolutely done. Let's just go our separate ways and quit.
Yep.
And it was the last thing that I thought would come out of his mouth. But he said, I'm so sorry for all the pain that I've caused our family. And I could tell when he walked in that there was something different about him. And my first response was, I forgive you.
Yeah.
And I kind of think I probably shocked both of us by saying that, because that wasn't typical language that we had used in our family. And so I was able to say, I forgive you. And then you can go on.
Yeah, excuse me.
No, it's always good. No worries. That is amazing. And then you went to the new church with Bree, right, Kevin?
I did. Yeah. First time walking into that style of a church, right? Non-denominational church. Up until then, we'd always gone into more of a traditional church, Lutheran-based church is what we had been in predominantly, Presbyterian a little bit. So I walk into a church in a high school of all places, and I'm like, what in the heck is this doing at a high school? Like, why? Like, really? Don't we have a center? Like, can't we afford something better than this? And so, of course, I'm judgmental, but walk in, loud music, people's arms are in the air, worshiping, all of that. Totally new experience for me. But immediately I was just greeted by so much love. The joy of Jesus was being just thrown out everywhere by from the people that greeted me and being able to meet with people as I walked in. And I was running a little bit late that day. I won't get into that whole story right now, but running a little bit late into that day. So I kind of rushed in, and they had saved us a seat kind of up towards the front on the stage right side. And I heard the gospel message really for the first time. I mean, I'd grown up in church. This is the gospel according to Mark. This is the gospel according to John. That type of a setting, that type of a teaching. But this was a storytelling based, very simply taught so that I could understand it, message of the gospel message, teaching of the gospel message. And it radically changed my life in that moment. The pastor that was there that day was a guest pastor, and he taught from the book of John 4, the woman at the well. Oh. And I saw in that moment that here I was the woman at the well. And yet he talked about things that were so near and dear to my heart, of like, you could be thirsting for everything, or you could be thirsting for anything, but yet nothing will satisfy your thirst other than Jesus. You could have all of the things in the world. None of them will matter if you don't have Jesus. So all of these things were like the life that I had lived up to this point. And all of a sudden I was like, man, they did an altar call. Love the fact that we do an altar call at that church every single week, and a public one where you actually walk up front. And when they gave that opportunity, I saw somebody else go forward, because I didn't really know what it was, right? Like, I hadn't seen that. I didn't know what that represented.
And I was praying, like, oh my gosh, okay, just release control again.
Yeah. And so somebody went forward, and I realized that's what you're supposed to do in this moment if you're feeling that. And I looked at her and I said, will you go up with me? And I was bawling. I left a puddle in my seat, and I left a puddle of tears at the altar. I was truly a broken man that was getting a new heart only because of Jesus. And I gave my life to the Lord that day, really made him my savior, not so much my Lord yet in that moment, but gave him our savior. And that really started the journey for us to be able to start healing what was broken. And the way that I describe this is like, you go through the reconciliation process, but then there's the restoration process. Mm-hmm. We were in that reconciliation process at that point. We were like, hey, let's reconcile this marriage. Let's get to a spot to where we can actually have a conversation about what this could look like if we were to start to pursue restoration. And God pretty much took it from there.
Well, and then you did, again, I'm going to say the smartest thing, but we all know your inspiration was the Holy Spirit. Yeah. You turned together toward Jesus, and there was a marriage program at your church. And I think this should encourage all of our marriage champions, who are the ones that host the marriage programs at their church, because you guys are a success story because of that. And so many are probably also identifying with you, going, oh yes, that's how we started. And you were able to plug right in because of Bree's relationship with some of the women who had been mentoring her. And you worked through the program there for a couple of years, right? To really get back on solid footing.
Yeah, I'll let you tell that story about how we got plugged in with them, with SOS.
Yes. Okay. So I had reached out at the end of my rope. Excuse me. I had reached out at the end of my rope early on. And I had heard about this program, and I had taken the call in my closet because I did not want him to hear that I was trying one more thing, especially if it was going to be faith-based, because he was just hardened heart and he was done. And so I had reached out, and this was in May, and she was so gracious. She said, okay, let's get you signed up. She said, our next opening is October. And I said, we're going to be divorced by then. I can't wait till October. Yeah. And so we decided to keep praying. And then over the summer, she had offered me a spot to just take me through a mentor program and just learn about what it meant to surrender your life truly, what it meant to get healing from all of the past pain and bitterness that we all experience in life growing up, even at a young age. And it doesn't mean that we're playing the martyr. It's just taking a real look and saying, wow, I've been hurt over the years, and it's shaped me for better, for worse. And what I didn't know, Amy, was that I brought in a lot of bitterness and hurt and pain into our marriage. And when we were early on, side note, when we were early on married, we had some things, some trials, but they were very minimal. And I look back and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, God was probably like, okay, I'm here.
I'm here.
And we were checking the box. And so we had a blended family. The day that we got married, our daughter was 5. I had her when I was 18. And so we just had different things that didn't know that was going to, oh gosh, like just be trials, just trials, and friendships and other friends' divorces and different things that really impacted us when we didn't have a solid foundation. And so that summer I was able to get plugged in, and she invited me to their couples Bible study. And I thought it was kind of weird because I'd never done a Bible study before. And it was amazing. I learned with all these people that, gosh, they had things that they were struggling through too, but that they were there together and they were going to fight together. And they were going to surround themselves with a community that was going to support them and lift them up. And that was so refreshing to me. And I just kept praying and hoping that one day that could be for us. And so I was able to process a lot of the bitterness, pain, and hurt that I had experienced. And that really set me up for success. I had started to look at him with a different lens. I was still angry at some of the things, and I was still, working through it. But I just was able to keep going to different small groups and really get poured into. It was a blessing.
Yeah. And then you guys together went and spent about 2 years as you were developing in your walk. And then you became mentors.
Yes.
And started pouring back into others and developing kind of your style. Do you want to pick up from there? Because this leads directly into the courses that you now offer.
Yeah. During that journey that Bree got a chance to go on by herself initially, and then we got to go through it together. And really it's a 12-month program that we went through, and you've got a facilitating group, and then you've got a mentor group that ends up walking with you for that 12-month period for your check-ins and things like that. So we got a chance to do that. And then it really was. So we reconciled, and we started to reconcile in April of 2016. We started that program in May of 2016. So we had about a 12-month period of where we were really just like going on this journey of one, independently healing and then collectively healing, right? Because it takes both parts of that when you have such a catastrophic event that's taken place in your marriage like we had. Hopefully not everybody has that. We know a lot of people don't, but if you do, you both have to go on different healing journeys. So it's really important that you've got a system and you've got a process in place that allows for both of those to happen and to be able to educate people on what those look like. So we got a chance to go through that. Then we stepped into becoming mentors for this program. We really started off in that mentorship side of it, of where we walked with couples for 12 months. Then we moved into the facilitator role. We did this for a handful of years, loved it. It was absolutely amazing. Some of our greatest, one of the best parts about it was that every time we took a couple through it, it was a beautiful reminder for us of the areas of our heart that were still getting clogged up. So it was like, it was ministering to us just as much as it was to them. It was such a joy. But with the ages of our kids, and it was kind of a business that we didn't feel like could scale very well because of just the immense amount of time and energy that it takes to take a couple through it, that we started to look at how do we create our own. And so in 2020, we decided to hit pause on doing that, still did a little bit of it here and there when the opportunity was right. And then we started to develop our own system and our own playbook that allowed us to be able to build something that we felt like could scale and could impact even more marriages and people. That our biggest target was connecting with the people that we were before we met Jesus. When our marriage was at the spot of what I'll call like a level 5 marriage, I think a lot of people fall into that spot of a level 5 marriage. And it was like, man, if somebody could have just shown us what it looked like to create a level 6, a level 7, a level 8, a level 9, ultimately getting to this level 10, we probably would have signed up for that. But we never had it. Nobody was talking about it. So we started to develop our own tools and our own curriculum and our own coaching style that allowed us to build a program now where we get the opportunity to work with couples. We get the opportunity to work with individuals. I work with males. Bree works with females. And then oftentimes what results from us working with an individual is that then they end up becoming couples that we work with. And that's the most beautiful story, is when somebody starts because they're in this position where they're not aligned as a married couple. And all of a sudden one of them starts working with us, and then the spouse starts to see the change in them. And they're like, wait a minute, something's different. I want to know what you're up to. Let me go find out about this as well. And then they join our program, and then we start to see true restoration start to take place.
Yeah. And in 2020, you decided, you had been with a very, very successful and lucrative career, but in 2022, your Jesus was showing through so much that it was not aligning with the business. And so you decided, let's do this, and started this yourself, Reverence Restored. And I love that you also mentioned that on ramp, how there may be a woman, Bree, who comes to you, and I'm going to ask you a little bit more about that in a minute, who's been dealing with hurt or betrayal, and she needs to talk to somebody who understands, and I'll let you unpack that. But then to you, Kevin, a lot of your language on your website, I was really impressed with it, because although it's very much Christ-centered, it's not Christian easy. It reads in a way that would really appeal to a businessman, to a man who's been successful and who wants, talk like a leadership and goal setting and leaving a legacy. Those are the types of words that are on there that are very motivational. And you took all your skills kind of from the business world that made you so successful, and now have translated into that kind of that coaching model for men. And then the neatest thing is when you're working with one and their spouse sees the change, you can easily transition them to the couples program, and you do not like say, okay, now that's double the price because now we're paying for both. You just are like, no, you're in with us, and this is what it is, whether it's one or the other or both. This is your thing. And so you've reduced that barrier. That's really like that.
I'll let Bree unpack the first question that you asked regarding what it looks like to work with a woman first.
Yeah, there's a lot of complexities, I think, when it comes to one-on-one with the female, because there's a lot of different layers. And so what I love is doing our discovery call in the very beginning and see if we're even a great fit. Someone's going to be investing their time and their resources with me. And so I want to make sure that it's a good fit. If we're going to be working together for the next 12 months, that's a lot of hours with someone. And I want them to feel safe, and I want them to feel seen and valued and heard. But I also want to speak truth. And so I want to make sure that we do that discovery call. We do it for each one of our programs, but then really just getting down to the heart of the problem. A lot of times women who have come to me have been involved with some infidelity in their marriage and betrayal. And even if it's not that, there's women who just want to level up their marriage and they just feel stuck. A lot of women want to share with their friends and their family. And don't you know, if the person on the other side isn't Christ-centered, and even if they are, we have to fight for the truth. And we have to fight for saying, okay, I'm going to tell you what, I don't think that you want to hear, but it's the truth. And I'm going to pray on it and feel like God's leading me to that. And so I just am clear with the women up front. I don't want it to be a therapy session where they're just calling to vent and then say, okay, let's just see you next time. There's times where we have to allow some space for that, but I really want to get down to it. I want to figure out how we're communicating with our husband. A lot of times husbands come like us. I didn't know that I was dishonoring my husband in so many things that I was doing, and it was chipping away at his character. It was chipping away at his strengths. And I wanted him to be this leader of our family. Didn't know that I wanted a Christ-centered leader, but I wanted him to be this leader of the family. But then I tore him down with a lot of different things. And most of it, I will say, was not intentional. Some of it probably was. We're not perfect. But so when I work with a woman, I just want to be real and say, okay, this is what's going on. Let's take a look at it and let's see where we can get you some wins. Your husband needs to feel respected. Going back to the Bible, love and respect, honor, submission. It doesn't mean what the world tells us it means to just do everything that our husband says. It means we are partners. And God covers us. If I'm being submitted to my husband and he's submitted to Christ, that's God's design for our marriage. And so women can start taking different steps to really press in and dig their heels in. And the best way to say, I'm not letting the enemy steal my marriage. I'm going to fight, and we're going to get around a community. And so it's a really important part to have that safety net.
Yeah, I love that. To restore. That's one of your Reverence Restored, to restore that relationship. Well, let's talk, Kevin, about what you do with the guys.
Yeah, not much different other than from the standpoint of how we do it, right? I think it's really important. Every male, and from my perspective, we all fall into the spot of where we want to have leadership. We want to be in a leadership role. God designed us that way, right? And I would say that when sin enters the world, the woman's going to have a desire to control her husband for the rest of her life. So yeah, exactly. No matter where we find ourselves in a faith-based community or not, there's these desires that I believe God has wired in each one of us uniquely. And from a leadership standpoint, one of the things that I saw throughout my early 20 to 25 years on this planet, as I was getting out of college and moving into the workforce, trying to figure out how I was going to provide for my family, was most of the men in that atmosphere that I was in, the environments that I were in, didn't have a strong biblical background. They were phenomenal leaders. They could build teams. They could build businesses. They could unpack a P&L. They could do the things that would result in reward as the world defines reward, and they would do it exceptionally well, right? So I immediately got surrounded in that environment. Show me your friends, I'll show you your future. All of a sudden, next thing you know, I start behaving the same way that these people did. Not the best, not God's best for our life, and certainly wasn't going to represent what we wanted our marriage to look like. So as I'm going on this journey and learning about what it looks like to be a man, and I'm looking around me, I'm like, this is what it looks like to make a lot of money. Who cares how we treat our family? Work comes first. Let's make sure that you bleed the color of whatever logo of whatever company that you work for. That's it. When work calls, we handle it. Your wife stays home. She's the one that takes care of the kids, which is great. Like, I love the fact that God has blessed us in a way for so many years where my wife has been able to stay home. But what Bree was even describing is this fact of what does true submission look like and how do we get respect? It's like, wait a minute, if I'm not submitted to Christ, right, and all of a sudden I'm in this spot of saying, hey, I'm the one that makes the money, that's not going to result in us having an awesome marriage. So I'm like, I want to figure out how to connect with guys as they're growing up and getting into the marketplace, or even people that have been in it for a while, to say, hey, I've made a lot of money, but guess what? I look back now in my family, what did I do it for? And I spent 10 years on the road, 150 nights a year. I was pretty good about not missing a lot of the big things. Yeah. The big things don't matter. It's the little moments that matter. Yeah. I want to be there when our daughter got a splinter in her toe. I want to be there for the little moments of, hey, I brought this picture home. When's dad going to be home so that he can see it? Those are the ones that matter. That's how we build a legacy that lasts. So when I work with guys, we want to get down to the foundation of it as quick as possible. The foundation is being the pastor of their heart, the protector of their mind, and the provider of stability. Provision for me was all about monetary things for so long. And it's like, it doesn't matter what we accumulate. What matters is the culture that we create within our home. So if that's our foundation, great. But guess what? You don't see the foundation a lot of the time. When you're building a new building, the foundation's below grade. That's the part that's like in our four walls. That's the nucleus. That's the part that we know is what's going to determine whether or not we're building something that's going to be on solid rock or it's going to be on shifting sand. So it was like, I help men build that with the foundation. Then building up from there really is the 5 pillars of who's giving me vision, who's getting my best, who's going to battle with me, will I be ready when it matters most, and will my legacy last? Those are 5 questions that I can answer in the secular world, or I can answer in the world if I want to be defined by who God says that I am. So we start unpacking who's your vision coming from as quickly as we can. If my vision's coming from Warren Buffett, well, great. I'm probably going to make a lot of money. But if my vision's coming from Christ, guess what? Now I have the ability to create a legacy that's going to last. So we're starting to get those types of terms of thinking about what it looks like to restore honor in our home by placing Christ at the center of our marriage, knowing that everything we do is a result of whether or not we are connected to the true source or not.
I love that. And then with a couple, you can kind of take some of the lessons you learned. Do you want to go over just a little bit what you might say to a couple?
Yeah, for the couples, I think when you're walking on those 2 tracks, it's really important that we establish that early on. So when we're working with couples, we're sharing with them the 2 different lenses to which we're coaching through, from the male perspective and the female perspective. And that's why I only coach males and Bree only coaches women. Part of the reason, one of them, it's a fidelity fence for us. But another one for us is that I don't know what it's like to be a wife. I don't know what it's like to be a woman. I'm not good at it. I wasn't designed for that.
Nor should you. That's it.
Yeah. And Bree the opposite way. So it's like, we want to work with these couples individually and collectively, and we want to create space for them to come to us and say, hey, I'm struggling with this with my wife right now. And all we're doing is meeting with the 4 of us. I don't feel like I'm in a safe spot where I can share that. Great. So this is what it's going to look like. You can share that with me. And then I'm going to put a timeline on it. When are we going to be comfortable enough to share this with your bride? Because she has to know everything that's going on in your heart as well. So let's talk through it together. What are the what if scenarios? What happens if she does this? What happens if she does this? We can start to unpack those together. And then we're building all of that, you know, on the 2-track lane of what it looks like to be a female, what it looks like to be a male in a God-honoring marriage, and the way that we're designing it. And then from there, we're starting to bring in what we call the 4 C's of marriage: communication, conflict resolution, connection, and community. And that's kind of the foundation to which we lay for the couples. But before we get to those, we've really got to go on these 2 different tracks for a short period of time to know that, hey, these are the roles and responsibilities. This is what it's going to look like. Remember, you're the pastor of her heart. You're the protector of her mind. One of the things we talk about very early on is our L4 strategy: listen to learn and lead with love. Listen to learn and lead with love. We're building these things into the culture that we're creating within our home, of the importance of that. Because if I'm gonna listen to somebody, if I want to be able to communicate with them, I'm not listening to react. I'm listening to learn. That's how I become a student of my spouse, really learning, okay, hey, why are they sharing this with me? There's a reason that they're talking. They're not just talking because they want to take up air. They're talking, they're talking because they want me to feel something or hear something, and they want me to be moved to action. So what is that? Then how do I respond with love with that? So we start bringing all of these different components together on this 12-month journey to really help people establish what's the foundation of your home look like? What are the key values that you have within your home? Really looking at it through the lens of, how do you build a business? We've got to have our core values. We've got to have our mission statement. We've got to have our vision statement. We have to have all of this set up so that we can build something that we feel like we can scale. Ultimately, the scale is leaving a legacy that lasts.
I love that. And I love how you've just so beautifully explained, and I can see why the business language really will appeal to those leaders. And then with Bree, you bring the softness in for the women. And because you're coaches, you do things online, so you're available across state lines.
Yep.
So our marriage champions can find you. So thank you so much for being here, Bree and Kevin.
Thank you so much.
Oh, and again, Marriage Champions, if you'd like to learn more about the Baileys and Reverence Restored, you can always find us at themarriageinitiative.org or marriageresources.org.